Following several incidents related to racism at different schools around the country, with of course the Pretoria Girls High being in the headlines again, and another school, Die Wilgers, as well, many are asking what is happening. Why do racial elements plague schools? What's happening with the learners at schools? What role are parents playing that might have an influence on how their children are behaving? I'm now obviously joined by Professor Boitumelo Senokoane here at Unisa to just help us analyze what's happening with learners at school. Why are learners implicated in racial elements?
Look, we cannot separate the learners from the realities of our society. You know, South Africa, even after 1994, remains that place where racism is still alive. The only difference will be that it will be privatized. Privatized meaning that it becomes domesticated, only dealt with in separate places, in closed areas, instead of going there publicly there, because people will know that there are repercussions for going out, making it a public issue. But the reality of the matter is that that is the South Africa that we still find ourselves today. Even at our workplaces, the same still happens. In our economic spheres and political spheres, the same still happens. And our children are part of this bigger society that influences how they think and how they operate. Therefore, schools are not an exception. Mind you that our children are a product of first families, churches, communities, and in this regard, schools that are, belonging to particular communities, having different racial understandings and interpretations on how to look into the society. So there's no exception for our children at their schools.
Are parents not heeding the call that maybe they should, teach their children differently at home? Sometimes
when these incidents happen, children will think that they are innocent activities, only to find out that white children are socialized, indoctrinated in a certain way towards black people at the different schools and within the society itself. And even in churches, you'll be surprised that the Dutch Reformed Church, to date, it still operates with the net for the blankest mentality. And if it can happen, you must understand that three fundamental things help in or assisted in sustaining colonialism, apartheid, and whiteness. One would be faith. People in church, this is the land of our forefathers. Therefore, we must do everything in our power to protect what belongs to our forefathers. Secondly, racism, whiteness, colonialism have always been commercialized. They've been financed in a certain way. So you need money to finance that. Beyond spirituality, you need money to finance that. But one of the key areas that they knew how to sustain apartheid, colonialism, and whiteness has to do with the element of education. In fact, in one of the interviews that I did, I asked people to say, DA, when it makes its own decision on the ministerial position that they will want, one of them will be education. And I said basic education and higher education will be one of their targets, because it is through education that they'll be able to put a particular narrative, build an agenda that is not suspected, because it then becomes whiteness, like its education, becomes nothing, becomes innocent, becomes colorless, and you cannot suspect it. And our children will be fed an education system that will sustain the values and principle of whiteness.
So, in short, one can say that some of the complaints that we see coming to the fore from black learners who are saying that this is what they're subjected to, even if it may have gray areas, it's not exaggerated. No, it is real.
It is real. The only difference is that whiteness is sophisticated. In colonialization, it will operate otherwise through imperialism. In apartheid, it will operate otherwise. But even today, it is still there. You'll see it in how media reports. In 1994, the African National Congress made a fundamental mistake of not going back into where the problem started. For example, faith, like I said, is one of those, because if people still believe to date that they are superior than others because of faith, for you to change them, it's a very problematic thing to do. It's almost impossible, because they still go to separate churches to date, go there, worship separately, telling one another that they are a chosen nation by God. The problem of Palestine and Israel is an indication of a long-standing problem of religion and faith, which was never resolved. And you can legislate this thing. You can deal with economic component. The only difference with economics is that my children as a middle class or the children of a rich person will at least gain access and sit in the dinner table with those white children, people, and so on and so forth. But it is because of access of resources. Those without resources, they will be treated lesser and lesser. But even those of ours who might gain privileges because of the class issue, class material, once they lose that, they are then relegated back to where they belong. But the same will not happen to whites. Whites operate in it because by virtue of their skin, not anything else, not hard work, not anything, by virtue of their skin, they automatically have access and privilege.
When you look at basic education, how they've been dealing with this matter over the past 30 years, are they hitting the right spots? Are they doing enough to eradicate this disease in our schools?
I don't think they are doing enough because they work on the premise of legalizing or legislation, legalizing the problem and legislate. Of course, we need to have laws in place, policies in place, but they mean nothing if you do not have other programs that try to deal with the problem from its base, from its foundation. And I think I always make an example that in the United States of America today, you still have centers of Black studies as an example, because the attempt is to try to deal with the problem. Because us thinking that whiteness has evaporated somewhere or has been locked somewhere in Orania, it's just something that we are hallucinating. It is not correct, because whiteness operates in all our spaces, in the corridors, in our workspace, in how we are doing business. Now, if you go to any place now and you speak Afrikaans, it gives you privilege as a Black person, even if it's not fluent, but it gives you access because they think that this is one of those that we can work with. So, I think Department of Education and in this regard, we'll have to try to come with other mechanisms, spaces of making sure that our children are able to be exposed to these realities first, but secondly, to advise them, teach them how to deal with this moving forward. Because the reality of the matter is that you can bring them under one roof in one school, offer them more or less similar or same curriculum, but so long as you do not, in your approach of indoctrination, inculturation, you do not deal with the fundamental problem of whiteness. You'll always deal with this problem.
All right, thank you so much. Of course, they speaking with Professor Boitumelo Senokoane here at Unisa. This as we wait to see how the situation at Girls High will be dealt with. Of course, we understand that it is a 3-month period, but also to rehabilitate the school as the school keeps on making headlines year on about racist-related allegations that plague that particular school, but not, singling out Girls High, as there are other schools around Pretoria, around the country, that are dealing with the same situation.